What's the location of your emergency? Hello? 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 911, is anyone there?
He's dead! He's dead!
Who's dead?
I know, the guy shot him!
Hold right there. Hold there.
What guy shot him? Did somebody rob the business?
They tried!
Okay, are the officers there with you?
Yes, he's here!
All right, you guys go down middle. I got back here.
He went that way? You saw him turn right? 341 radio. Suspects are 10-8. I am holding the scene.
Oh my God!
That day, I watched someone die.
Come with me, ma'am.
It's like a tattoo in my brain, and I'll never be who I was before.
For those most affected by a homicide,
We were afraid that they were never going to find these guys.
There was another incident last night. Same description of the same guys.
the first 48 is just the beginning.
Count 48, felony murder. Count 52, aggravated assault.
To give a jury a complete story, we needed to prosecute as many of those armed robberies as we could.
This is the story of the fight for justice.
All of the evidence pointed to the fact that he was not the person that shot Felix Cosme.
In the weeks, months, and years,
For the first time, I have experienced unbridled rage.
My first thoughts when I showed up at this scene were, why this place? Why an auto parts store? They don't keep a lot of cash on hand. I think one of the reasons I may be a good detective is I always want to get to the bottom of something. I want to know the answer for everything.
I got victim's last name if you want to write down. Cosme. C-O-S-M-E.
63-year-old Felix Cosme was working at the store part-time as a cashier. He'd retired from the Gwinnett County Sheriff's Department 5 years ago after over 35 years in law enforcement. He leaves behind 2 sisters.
I had seen him many times over the years. He had given his life to public service and then was just out trying to make a little money on the side during his retirement, and now he's never going to get to enjoy that.
Knowing that the victim of the homicide was a retired police officer, that was a lot to deal with. It was one of our own.
You know, they got robbed a little while back.
In November, I think it was like 22nd.
When I heard that it had been robbed 6 weeks earlier, the first thing I thought is maybe it's the same crew. We hadn't caught them, and so they've returned to the same location.
I just talked to the manager, and he said they did not pony up for cameras.
And on that section of Hamilton Mill Road, there's not a lot of street lights. It gets more rural.
It was pretty discouraging being on scene, didn't have a lot to go on.
So it was important for us to speak to the surviving victim.
While the team waits for a warrant to enter the store,
What happened today?
I was finishing up a 2012 Jeep Liberty. When I was walking back in, I turned and I saw a silver grayish 2012 to 2014 Jetta backing in, and then the lights went out real quick. Talking to the police, I knew the worst part was over, but the harder parts were coming. I knew I was gonna have to relive that moment. And then I walked in, and he came in. I was in the front, and then Felix was further back. The guy tapped me on my shoulder. He was very calm. He said, "Open your drawer." I said, "Okay, here you go. Have it." I mean, there wasn't probably $40 in there. Felix had his back to me because he was on the phone. The guy walked past me, and he told Felix to open up his drawer. Everything was just going super slow motion. And the only thing in my brain at the time was, don't speak, Don't scream, don't move, just make it home. Felix reached for his gun, and he shot Felix twice. The guy ran over and grabbed his gun.
He went back to Felix and took his gun.
Yes. I'm frozen, just standing there. And when he picked up the gun, he started walking back towards me. I said, please don't kill me, I have a kid. He put the gun to the back of my head. He pulled the trigger, and I heard it click. But nothing came out. It was like the world stopped for a second. And all I saw was my daughter. Felix was moaning, and then he was saying, call the cops. And then he took 2 steps like he was gonna leave, and then I heard him kind of like fastly walk towards Felix. He grabbed Felix's gun, and I watched him shoot him one last time in the face. Then Felix's body stopped moving, and then he ran out the front door. I waited a few seconds, ran towards the door, saw them go right towards the interstate. I could see a shadow of a guy in the driver's seat. I wasn't sure if it was a male or female, but there was a second person. I locked the door, I ran to Felix, and then I started screaming. I think my voice was catching up to my brain, and my body was catching back up to reality of what was actually happening.
Did he have dark skin complexion, light skin complexion?
Dark skin.
And how old do you think he probably was?
Between 24 to 27. He had a jacket on. It was black and it had zippers.
It's very uncommon for people to be able to give us that many details.
Did he have any tattoos on his face or neck?
Gold ring on his left hand pinky finger. It was bigger and it was square.
To notice those details and be able to tell us was amazing.
Search warrant, sir.
Okay, awesome. Oh, he got him in the eye.
Felix was shot 7 times in the head, chest, stomach, leg, and arm.
The manner in which the victim was killed, it was just horrific. There's 2 right here.
Behind the counter, the team finds 7 .380 casings.
Okay, here's another one.
And near Felix's body, a single .40 caliber.
You could tell the suspect began firing around the edge of the counter, went behind the counter, and then out the other end. It's as if he was following the victim.
And where's your gun?
The guy took it. The victim's gun was not located at the scene. We believe at that time it went with the suspect.
Then,
when? Yeah, there's a 44 in West Side that just happened. There's another robbery at an auto parts store on the other end of the county. And the first thing that runs through my mind is like, this is not a coincidence.
How did they describe the guy?
He says around 20 to 25. This is really calm. He's wearing a all black hoodie.
Gotta be the same dude. You just know that you just killed somebody and you went and did another one? The fact that he could commit a murder and then 45 minutes later just continue to commit more robberies is definitely telling.
I was afraid that we were going to have another murder.
We don't get very many of these robberies, but 2 in the same night in the same type of store, almost impossible that they're not related.
Did they describe her car?
We really don't have his car description.
Just hit me up if you find something else out.
"12 hours since Felix's murder,
Norcross developed a tag coming off the interstate, off the LPR, over the overpass.
A car that matches the Jetta the eyewitness described was photographed by a license plate reader near the second robbery.
To be in that area around that time with the same description is probably not a coincidence.
And it comes back to a black female. She's doing a full workup on it.
That afternoon,
Guys, squeeze in, please.
Homicide meets with the robbery division.
I found out there had been other robberies at auto parts stores prior to this.
Gwinnett County 911, what's the location of the emergency? Decatur Road, Decatur, Georgia.
Linder Highway.
I wanted to look back through these other robberies that had occurred so we can start comparing.
Just been robbed at gunpoint.
Who was just robbed? White, black, Asian, Hispanic. He was a black male, black jacket on, mid to later 20s, 5'6", 5'7". What'd he say? Money, lots of money.
No one had been killed in any of the prior incidents. Were they ramping up?
That's what we're trying to do today is find out what cases match.
We are looking to see if the suspect that did the robberies is also the suspect who did the homicide.
People holding up auto parts store is very rare. Because of that, Cofield was given that series.
Detective Cofield had intimate knowledge of the robbery investigation. It was very important that homicide worked really closely with him.
November 22nd of last year, the same O'Reilly's was hit. A black male, really skinny, black sweater, just like this one and all of them. They said that they should always stress that he was really calm.
The description of the suspect was the same.
He had a jacket on. It was black and it had zippers. He was very calm.
Fast forward, last night I was the MO.
I'm down, very calm. He told him that I'm only here for the money, not y'all.
Pretty bold. They've shown the violence and really don't give an F. We got to do something with this car. That's kind of the real solid lead we have now, so we work with what we got.
"23 hours in,
We've got the witness, Stella, in front of a sketch artist.
You got the drawing back?
Yeah.
Look at that picture.
they compare Stella's description of the suspect
This came off of her post last night
with the photo of a man from the Jetta owner's social media.
Oh, yeah.
He got a pinky ring on.
That's why
He got a pinky ring on.
That's him. Oh, that's him.
That's him.
It felt great. I was definitely thinking we're on the right track. How many people wear pinky rings and could be involved in these types of incidents?
We have enough PC to grab that car.
But in these types of situations, we want to make sure we have all of our ducks in a row, not get ahead of ourselves. I want to get a little more so we have this more airtight.
As the first 48 winds down, a judge approves a warrant to place a tracker on the Jetta.
We started surveilling the vehicle. Maybe we can catch them in the act.
Tracker Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Over the next 5 days,
she is continuing to go to work every day.
It was not going towards any auto parts stores and was rarely moving.
We're just gonna have to go ask her, hey, what were you doing in there?
Hello?
Hey.
detectives approach the woman who owns the Jetta at her apartment.
We're following up on an incident that happened in Gwinnett on Jimmy Carter last week, Wednesday. There's an LPR that reads all the tags coming off the interstate right there, and it had your tag. So we're just trying to follow up and see what were you doing, what was going on.
I was heading home. When I got off on Jimmy Carter, I turned around. A police officer actually pulled me over and told me that I didn't put my signal on when I switched lanes. They basically just gave me a warning.
Okay. Well, thank you for talking to us. I appreciate it. So we can pull that and see when she got pulled over. They can pull, if you know specifically the tag.
Yep, she was pulled over.
The night of the murder, when the second auto parts store was robbed, the Jetta was 5 miles away.
Definitely had a pit in my stomach. You yell at yourself, what did you miss? I was so sure that we had the right vehicle. But at this point, you just got to get back to the drawing board and start over.
investigation.
Gwinnett County 911, what's the location of the emergency?
You want to know how we arrived? Just got robbed at gunpoint.
Felix was the kind of brother that was always at all my milestone events. Here's Felix at your graduation. See how happy he was.
Uncle Felix was always present. He was always there for us, my brother and I both.
Here's Felix. I think this was confirmation. He was about 9 years old. About that age, it's a story that my brother and sister would always tell. My mom was out in the city and she was mugged.
Felix sees this and he darts after that guy. And I could hear my mother yelling at my brother to stop.
What kind of kid does that, to try and chase a mugger? Even then, you know, Felix was a man of action, always jumping in when he probably shouldn't. We were afraid that they were never gonna find these guys, but we kept being reassured that there were leads that they were following. So we kind of put our faith into their hands.
There was another incident last night. Same description of the same guys, possibly same car description.
2 months into the investigation,
We're looking at the video we collected now from a tire place across the street. They just went around the corner.
This was the first time that we were able to confirm there were 2 suspects.
Now we can say, yes, both guys are participating in the armed robberies.
The car looks silverish over there.
Yeah.
Turning right onto Lawrenceville Highway and heading north. That car is going to be picked up on a flock camera somewhere.
We were able to run the tag.
The registered owner had a stepson, and he matched the age description.
25-year-old Tavares Nora played basketball in college and now works for AmeriCorps. A month before the homicide, he'd been pulled over for a DUI.
There was nothing in Tavares' history that would link him to murder or robbery, and he did not match the description. But we knew that there was a getaway driver, so we wanted to look into that more.
Let's see. Somebody was in the car with him after he was arrested, and Prince Tafari Robertson, 27 years old. He's about the right age. Could be the other guy.
Prince Robertson is a father of 2 and has family who worked in law enforcement.
He does have an ag assault, possession of a firearm.
At this point, I'm thinking we were going down the right path. We've got 2 guys here, and one is definitely more violent than the other.
But I would say he looked pretty dang close to the drawing. This would be the trigger man.
At that point, the FBI had gotten involved because a lot of the surrounding jurisdictions had robberies that they were working.
We don't really have the ability to go into the other jurisdictions, and they can help us with that.
Five months in,
the FBI followed the vehicle that we had tied Prince Robertson to an auto parts store. They went into the store, came out, got into the car and drove off.
The suspects flee as agents try to stop them.
They crashed into a house at the end of a cul-de-sac.
The 2 suspects were able to flee from the vehicle and got away.
But inside the passenger floorboard of that car was the gun belonging to Felix Cosme.
Now we could actually tie them back to the homicide.
At this point, go speak with Tavares' family to see if they could try to get him to talk to us.
The next morning,
Tavares turned himself in.
I think he's just been the driver all along. I don't think he's the mastermind, but he knows he's in some serious trouble.
Why do you think you're here right now?
My mom called me and told me about a murder.
I know that you're not the only person involved. Maybe you're just helping a friend out. You kind of got drugged into something that you really didn't want to be in.
My strategy in this is to pull on his heartstrings, to try to get him to kind of turn on his friend.
Talk to me about your friend Prince. How do you know him?
I met him at a job.
Okay.
And the other guy has a pretty extensive criminal history.
Yeah. Like last night, I didn't know like that was gonna happen.
Okay. Well, talk to me about what happened just before that. Because you guys were somewhere right before that, you and Prince. So what happened?
That's something I'd rather talk to a lawyer about.
Okay.
You're going to be charged with armed robberies and with your case. You're going to be felony murder. I'll be back with you, okay?
Even though he's not the one that pulled the trigger, he's a party to the crime.
We're still out in the area looking for Prince Robertson. We knew that he just didn't disappear.
Two hours later,
our SWAT team and some of the sheriff's deputies, they were able to get him into custody.
Where did you stay last night?
Where I stayed? I was with a friend, a Mexican friend of mine. I just knew there was a little commotion going on in the area, and he gave me a place to stay.
What do you mean by commotion?
Commotion, like, you know, last night I seen a lot of helicopters in the area. There was police out, so I didn't know what was going on.
Okay.
All I know is I'm driving, and cars cut me off. I didn't know who it was. I didn't see no police lights. I didn't see nobody acknowledging themselves as the police. I didn't see GCPD signs. I didn't see Gwinnett County sheriffs. I didn't see. And at that point, I felt like I was in fear of my life, and I proceeded to basically remove myself from the situation.
The tactic that we use once somebody starts talking, just let them talk. Eventually, he'll say something we can use.
And so, what happened to your friend that was in the car with you?
I don't know. I don't know.
Y'all just split up?
Well, the thing is, he wasn't involved in anything.
What do you mean he wasn't involved in anything?
He wasn't. Me and him wasn't involved in anything.
Interesting.
So you never went to any auto parts stores?
Nope.
Okay. Well, what if I told you I have you on video at that auto parts store?
I wasn't at no auto parts store. Me, myself, I wasn't at no auto parts store. My partner wasn't at no auto parts store.
His demeanor changed, and I could tell by that change that he knew it was possible, that we had video of him.
You mean all the videos and the photos and the tag readers and guns that we have that come back to you, all of that?
What guns that come back to me?
You tell me?
The only two guns that were in my name were confiscated before.
This one wasn't in your name. You took this one.
From where?
Buford.
No, not at all. Not me.
It was in the car, bro. It was in the girl's car.
That's cool. That's cool. But then again, she got brothers, she got dudes, she probably did it before me. It's not my car.
There's really no good explanation for how you have Felix's gun in your car 6 months later. But it's accepting defeat if you admit it.
So you're that kind of person that can just murder somebody in cold blood and you can't even tell us you did it?
I never murdered nobody.
It was all denial. And he came off as very arrogant.
Do y'all do what y'all gotta do, man?
After 6 months, it was a relief that we had both of these guys in custody.
Felix would have been very proud. His brothers in blue, his law enforcement compadres, had, done him well.
I remember feeling a sense of relief and then just a renewed grief. It was the first step of closing the chapter.
The next thing was allowing the justice system to now take over.
8 months after Felix's murder,
I handed in my investigator's report to the DA's office.
Tavares and Prince will be tried together on felony murder and over a dozen counts of armed robbery.
It looks like just a murder case if you just look at one armed robbery by itself. But what it in fact was a series of auto parts store robberies. And to give a jury a complete story of what Prince and Tavares were up to, we needed to prosecute as many of those armed robberies as we could. Linking everything together, I felt I had a very strong case.
I was defending my client against 114 counts. The prosecution's theory was that the murder occurred during an armed robbery that was similar to the rest of them. So showing that the behavior of the perpetrators in each and every one of these was similar would definitely help the prosecutor prove their case.
We have to anticipate what their strongest evidence is, what their weakest evidence is, and attack it, counter it accordingly.
When Prince Robertson crashed the Hyundai Sonata, CSI personnel located Felix Cosbe's handgun inside the car.
But they didn't have a firearm they could put in my client's hand. And this vehicle wasn't registered to either my client or Mr. North.
In the backyard, they located a magazine for a .380 caliber firearm, the same type of ammunition that would link that magazine to the murder scene.
But they never recovered a .380 handgun from Prince or his co-defendant.
Then there was Stella's sweatshirt. During the armed robbery, the person touched Stella on the shoulder, and the DNA that was sent to the lab ultimately came back to Prince and Stella.
But when you actually look at the lab report, they found multiple contributors to DNA on Stella's sweatshirt. Prince's DNA plus 3 other contributors.
They could have been in contact with that piece of clothing at a different time, a different place, under different circumstances than an armed robbery.
There was surveillance video that was collected from various businesses along the way where multiple armed robberies were committed.
So we are looking at a surveillance video from the tire shop that is close to the armed robbery that occurred on March 16th of 2020.
2 figures, ethnicity unknown, gender unknown. It's hard to identify an individual other than a general description.
I started realizing that there really was not as much as they thought that they had. There's doubt in this case that Mr. Robertson was actually involved in these crimes.
The night of the shooting, I just hugged her for a long time. And she was like, "Mom, why are you hugging me?" And I'm like, I just need to hug you. I found out they caught the suspects, and I was like, that's great. I'm still scared. What if they have friends? What if there's someone looking for me because they told them, hey, I didn't shut a girl up? That was always in the back of my mind. My safety was just ripped from me. My quiet place, when it's warm, I'll go out in the garage and I'll tinker with my Audi. I replay that day a lot. I did not work with Felix often. He was older, he was a retired cop, he was the authority figure, so we naturally butted heads. That day, I decided I was gonna break the silence. I said, so, what made you get into the police force? And I've never seen this man light up so much. And we talked about forces. We talked about cars. We buried the hatchet. I do think about what could have been with Felix. I think I lost a budding friendship, a budding mentor.
But most importantly, his family lost a lot as well.
The best way to counter the state's evidence is to raise doubt.
As both sides prepare for trial,
I think the way the state has charged it, they want to imply to jurors that this was some sort of 2-3 year crime spree. But it could work against them, and I believe the state does run the risk of overwhelming the jury.
I typed all the relevant information, and then as I was going through them to see whether I could tie Prince Robertson or Tavares Nora to each armed robbery, I wrote their name on it. So this helped me immensely tie each armed robbery to another.
But a jury must consider each count separately, and we will attack each and every count.
Being able to prove all of the 114 counts at a trial was going to be much more difficult for the state.
The more and more I prepped the case for trial, I was very concerned that we were going to confuse the jury. So the plan is for Detective Cofield to testify. He was assigned to the robbery unit, so that was his portion of the case. He had pulled flock data, surveillance video, license plate reader data, and he had gone back to 2017 looking and digging and linking all of that together.
But 9 months before the trial,
something devastating happened. In an unfortunate accident, Detective Cofield passed away. I had to go to square one and plan a trial without probably the biggest witness of the entire case. For some of the information, I didn't have the raw data, so without him, I was not going to be able to admit that information.
I had just an extreme feeling of sadness and grief. We'd been friends for a long time. I did worry that if they can't prove that the robberies took place, then we don't have a murder charge.
2 months before the trial of Prince Robertson and Tavares Nora,
I felt like we really needed to offer a plea at that point.
For my client, exposure at a jury trial on a 114 count indictment is incredibly risky. So if we could get something that's not life without parole, that would be very beneficial.
When I was told that the shooter would be eligible for parole in 30 years, I went ballistic.
It was a shock. For the last 4 years, we were told there was going to be a trial. What do you mean, a plea deal?
A plea deal guarantees a conviction. Prince was going to spend at least 30 years in prison. It takes out the unpredictability of jurors. And at the plea hearing, a victim has a right to make a statement.
It was my hope that the Board of Pardon and Parole would have that statement in their files and weigh the impact when they contemplate whether or not to grant parole.
As for Tavares Nora,
all of the evidence pointed to the fact that he was not the person that shot Felix Cosme. The prosecutor came to me and offered 20 years in prison. Tavares dismissed that out of hand. The prosecutor suggested that he come out so he could watch the co-defendant, Prince Robertson, enter his plea.
He would be able to sit in the courtroom and see with his own eyes Prince take that plea. I wanted Tavares to change his mind.
The reason we're here today is Prince Robertson is being offered a plea for life, and Tavares Nora, he's also being offered a plea, and we're hoping that he's going to take that plea as well.
As long as the deputies are good, if we could have Mr. Robertson come to the podium.
Being in the same presence of the men who took my brother's life was very upsetting.
The state has agreed to allow the defendant to plead guilty to count 48, felony murder, count 52, aggravated assault, Count 55, armed robbery.
I remember looking at the shooter and thinking to myself, what a waste. I see a lost person, an individual that's going to be incarcerated for heaven knows how long.
Do you still want to enter a guilty plea to these offenses?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you in fact commit the offenses to which you are now pleading guilty?
Yes, ma'am.
And deputies, we're going to have several, I think, victims speak. Can we bring
In 30 years, it's hopeful that our statements will help convince the board not to grant parole.
The circumstances of Felix's death, a victim of a senseless act of violence, have deeply, deeply altered my perception of the world. For the first time, I have experienced unbridled rage. I had hoped that the justice system would provide the solace we desperately sought for this crime, or at the very least, life without parole. This would be justice for our family.
We were trying to convey that that's what these guys deserved.
Anything less than the maximum appropriate justice would be a tragedy.
We just have to have faith.
January 8th, 2020, my worst fears came to life. I was extremely nervous, but I wanted the guy that shot Felix to know what he did to me. I stood there and I watched my coworker Felix get murdered. I felt the gun on the back of my head and I closed my eyes, just praying that my daughter knew how much I loved her. I was ready to die, but by some miracle, I did not. I wanted him to know, even though he didn't shoot me, he killed me. I had so much left to do, so much to accomplish, but this night stole that from me. As I now live in a constant fear, he stole someone's son from this earth. He took someone's life, but he also destroyed mine.
My heart went out to her. Tremendous amount of agony in her statement.
Then Prince's mother spoke.
The life was taken, and I know this man was a good man. I cried for him. I beg for forgiveness. I beg for mercy. I am so sorry.
I think when he heard Felix's family speak, when he heard his mom speak, really affected him.
I can't replace my deepest condolences and my deepest sincere apologies for my actions.
I am going to sentence you, as has been negotiated, a life sentence with a possibility of parole.
The judge accepted the plea, but at that point, I didn't know whether or not Tavares was going to plea. Because of the volume of charges, it was many life sentences that he was potentially facing should he go to trial.
Tavares now, he understands, hey, this thing is real.
He wants to talk to his lawyer, and then he will make his decision about whether or not he's going to accept our plea.
I said to him, I'm fine with you not taking the deal, but there's not going to be any deal after today.
I hope he takes it, but if he doesn't, we'll be ready for trial. Do you understand that for the offense of felony murder, you could have been sentenced to life with or life without the possibility of parole?
Yes.
Understanding all of your rights, do you still want to enter a guilty plea to these offenses?
Yes.
Did you in fact commit the offenses to which you are now pleading guilty?
Yes.
But I will sentence you as has been negotiated, which will be an aggregate sentence of 40 years to serve 20 in confinement.
It was freeing to some extent. I've done everything that I could to advance justice for Felix. He would be proud, and that's all I need.
Stella, how are you?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
I was just thinking about you and wondering how you were holding out.
Not too bad. We got a new puppy, so.
Stella and I are connected. I would like to try to keep that relationship alive. I believe that I can help her heal like she can help me heal.
You know, it's been 4 years. Are you at a place where you have found a little more peace and quiet with this whole event?
There's some days where I'm really good and I'm fine. And there's other days where I'm not that great.
I think about things I could have done differently, and
maybe none of that would have happened.
It was not anything you did or didn't do. There are just really bad actors out there sometimes, and that is the real reason my brother really died. It could have been a lot worse. You survived, okay? You are the extension. If souls can move from one place to another place, my brother's soul left, embodied into you. So with that, I treasure you.
Rain had washed the streets of Northern California all afternoon, leaving behind a city that looked strangely polished, as if every secret had been scrubbed from the pavement. It was just after 10:30 p.m. on October 18th, 1987, when the first 911 call shattered that illusion. The dispatcher expected another report of a traffic collision or a neighborhood disturbance. Instead, a trembling voice whispered a sentence that would haunt investigators for decades. "There's a woman lying behind the old warehouse. I think she's dead." Within minutes, flashing patrol lights cut through the darkness. Officers crossed a narrow service road lined with abandoned freight buildings and overgrown weeds. The victim was found beside a rusted loading dock, partially hidden behind stacks of broken wooden pallets. There were no signs of robbery, no obvious weapon, no witnesses waiting to tell police what had happened, only silence. The woman was 28-year-old Emily Carson, a respected elementary school teacher known throughout the neighborhood for staying late after class to help struggling students. Friends describe her as careful, predictable, the kind of person who always phoned her parents every Sunday evening and never missed a family birthday. She had disappeared less than 3 hours earlier. Her car was still parked outside a grocery store several blocks away. The driver's door was locked. Her purse rested neatly on the passenger seat. Her wallet still contained cash. Nothing appeared stolen. Nothing appeared rushed. The crime scene challenged every assumption detectives normally relied upon. There were no tire marks fresh enough to identify a vehicle. Rain had erased most impressions in the mud. Nearby railroad tracks remained empty. The nearest businesses had already closed for the evening. If someone had watched the attack, they never came forward. Crime scene technicians worked through the night beneath portable floodlights, photographing every inch of wet concrete. They collected cigarette butts left months earlier by unknown visitors, rust flakes from the loading dock, small fibers trapped beneath broken boards, drops of water mixed with soil that offered little hope. Then one technician noticed something almost invisible. A dusty metal maintenance door leading into the warehouse had escaped the rain because of the building's roof overhang. Across its faded gray paint, barely visible beneath years of grime, sat a single fingerprint. Perfect. Not smeared. Not partial. A complete impression left by someone's right index finger. The print seemed strangely out of place. Investigators immediately assumed it belonged to a warehouse employee or maintenance worker. Still, protocol required it to be photographed and lifted. The fingerprint was carefully sealed into evidence. No one imagined it would spend nearly 40 years inside an archive before changing everything. The following morning, newspapers exploded with headlines. Beloved teacher found slain. Community shocked. California murder mystery baffles detectives. Parents gathered outside Emily's school carrying flowers. Students cried openly. Teachers struggled to explain tragedy to children too young to understand violence. The city demanded answers. Police promised quick arrests. Neither promise would survive the month. Detective Harold Benson led the investigation, a veteran homicide investigator with nearly 2 decades of experience. Benson believed every killer made at least one mistake. Somewhere inside the growing mountain of reports, interviews, and forensic evidence, he believed that mistake already existed. The challenge was finding it. Emily's final day appeared painfully ordinary. She taught morning classes, graded homework during lunch, attended a faculty meeting, stopped at a grocery store shortly after sunset. Security cameras were almost non-existent in 1987. The supermarket had none outside. Cashiers remember seeing her smiling while purchasing milk, bread, coffee, and apples. Nothing unusual. No one following her. No arguments. No visible fear. One employee vaguely recalled noticing a dark-colored sedan parked across the street for nearly an hour, but he couldn't describe the driver. It became the investigation's first ghost. Detectives interviewed hundreds of residents, former boyfriends, co-workers, neighbors, parents, construction workers, delivery drivers, everyone who had crossed Emily's path during the previous month. Most interviews produced sympathy. Some produced rumors. One neighbor insisted hearing tires squeal around 10 o'clock. Another believed seeing a tall man, wearing a baseball cap, walking near the warehouse district. Neither statement could be verified. Meanwhile, forensic reports continued arriving. No usable DNA. Very little biological evidence. No murder weapon. Rain had quietly destroyed whatever story the ground might have told. Attention returned repeatedly to the fingerprint. Technicians searched local databases. Nothing. State records. Nothing. Federal files. Nothing. It belonged to someone who had apparently never been arrested, or someone whose records had never been digitized. Weeks turned into months. Months became years. Evidence boxes multiplied. Leads evaporated. The investigation slowly transformed into something detectives feared more than failure. It became a cold case. Emily's parents refused to move from the family home. Every birthday, they placed fresh flowers beside her photograph. Every Christmas, they left one empty chair untouched. Neighbors gradually stopped discussing the murder. New families moved into the area without knowing its history. The warehouse eventually closed permanently. Its windows shattered. Graffiti covered its walls. Children dared one another to sneak inside the abandoned building after dark, unaware that detectives had once searched every corner looking for a killer. Detective Benson retired in 1998. Before leaving the department, he carried Emily's file into the property room himself. He paused for several seconds before placing it onto a steel shelf already crowded with forgotten investigations. "I hope somebody smarter than me finishes this one," he quietly said. The boxes disappeared into darkness. Years passed. Technology changed. DNA science advanced faster than anyone imagined. Fingerprints once examined through magnifying glasses were now scanned using sophisticated digital imaging systems capable of comparing millions of records within minutes. Cold case units began reopening investigations previously considered impossible. Emily Carson's file remained untouched. Not because investigators had forgotten, because there simply wasn't enough evidence to justify reopening it. At least, that was the official explanation. Unofficially, many detectives believed the killer had died long ago. The city itself transformed during the following decades. New apartment buildings replaced abandoned factories. Coffee shops occupied former warehouses. The loading dock where Emily had been discovered was demolished during a redevelopment project. Concrete covered the ground forever. Physical memories disappeared. Only archive photographs remained. Then, almost 37 years after the murder, a young evidence specialist named Rachel Kim received an assignment nobody wanted. Digitize unsolved homicide evidence scheduled for long-term preservation. Thousands of files. Thousands of photographs. Thousands of forgotten fingerprints. Most represented investigations with little remaining hope. Rachel approached the work with relentless patience. She believed every old case deserved modern technology, even if success seemed unlikely. Late one evening, she opened a faded evidence envelope marked simply, Carson, Emily, October 1987. Inside rested the fingerprint lifted from the warehouse maintenance door. The original acetate sheet had yellowed with age. Tiny handwritten initials identified the crime scene technician who collected it decades earlier. Rachel carefully scanned the print using equipment unavailable in the 1980s. The software enhanced ridge details invisible to the naked eye. For the first time since Ronald Reagan occupied the White House, the fingerprint existed as a high-resolution digital image. She submitted it through expanded state and federal comparison systems. Normally, such searches return nothing. Thousands of unmatched prints remain unmatched forever. Rachel clicked submit. The computer began processing. Minutes passed. No result. She continued organizing other evidence while the system searched silently in the background. Then an alert appeared. Possible match detected. She frowned. False positives happen regularly. The software displayed a confidence score, higher than expected. Rachel requested manual verification. 2 fingerprint examiners independently reviewed ridge endings, bifurcations, pore structure, and spatial alignment. One by one, every identifying point matched. The fingerprint belonged to a man no investigator had ever seriously considered. Not a violent criminal. Not a known gang member. Not a drifter. Not even someone mentioned prominently in the original reports. His name appeared only once, buried inside an interview transcript almost forgotten by history. A quiet local accountant, married, father of 2 young children in 1987, a volunteer youth baseball coach, respected by neighbors, never arrested, never publicly connected to violent crime. Back then, detectives dismissed him within minutes because he claimed he had never been near the abandoned warehouse. No evidence contradicted him. Until now, one forgotten fingerprint had silently waited nearly 4 decades to expose a statement that could no longer be true. And for the first time since that rainy October night, investigators realized they might not be hunting a mysterious stranger after all. They might have been overlooking someone who had hidden in plain sight from the very beginning. By sunrise, the atmosphere inside the California Department of Justice Cold Case Unit had changed completely. Conversations became shorter. Coffee cups sat untouched. Computer screens glowed with archive reports that had not been opened in decades. A murder everyone believed would remain unsolved had suddenly become active again. No announcement reached the public. No press conference followed. Only a handful of investigators knew that a single fingerprint had rewritten nearly 40 years of assumptions. The name on the report was Daniel Mercer, 59 years old in 2024, retired certified public accountant, married for 36 years, no criminal history, no documented acts of violence, no financial fraud, no restraining orders, nothing. His neighbors described him with almost identical words. Quiet, reliable, polite, invisible. He attended church every Sunday. He volunteered during food drives. He coached Little League baseball throughout the 1990s. The image did not fit, not even slightly. Detective Laura Mitchell, assigned to lead the reopened investigation, refused to accept appearances as evidence. She had spent nearly 15 years working homicide. She knew that some of the most brutal offenders had looked completely ordinary. The fingerprint tells us one thing, she reminded her team. He touched that warehouse door. What it doesn't tell us is why. The original case files were spread across a conference table nearly 20 feet long. Every photograph, every witness statement, every laboratory report, thousands of pages. The investigators began reading everything again, not searching for new evidence, searching for old evidence they had once ignored. Patterns slowly emerged. Daniel Mercer had not been a random name. In fact, he had crossed paths with Emily Carson more than anyone had realized. In 1987, Mercer worked for a regional accounting firm located only 6 blocks from Emily's elementary school. Every Tuesday and Thursday, he parked in the same public lot where Emily often left her car before walking to nearby shops. That fact meant little on its own. California cities are crowded. People unknowingly pass each other every day. But another report changed the picture. An employee from the grocery store had told detectives she vaguely remembered seeing a man wearing a gray business suit speaking with Emily in the parking lot shortly before she disappeared. The statement received almost no attention in 1987. The witness admitted she could not identify the man. She only remembered the suit because everyone else shopping that evening wore casual clothes. Mercer almost always wore gray suits to work. Still, thousands of men wore gray suits. It proved nothing. Another file surfaced. Detectives had interviewed Mercer only 5 days after murder because his office happened to overlook part of the warehouse district. The interview lasted just 18 minutes. Mercer calmly explained he had worked late that evening preparing tax documents. He denied seeing Emily, denied visiting the warehouse, denied leaving the office before 9:30. Investigators accepted the explanation almost immediately. No one checked further. Why would they? He had no known connection to the victim, no criminal record, no motive, no reason to lie, except now. The fingerprint suggested otherwise. Mitchell ordered every surviving record connected to Mercer in October 1987. Payroll logs, parking permits, employment schedules, telephone records, bank transactions. The process took weeks. Many documents had already been destroyed under routine retention policies. Others existed only on aging microfilm. Retired clerks helped locate forgotten boxes stored inside county archives. Slowly, missing pieces returned. One discovery immediately caught everyone's attention. Mercer's office security log showed something unexpected. Employees signed out whenever they left after hours. Daniel Mercer signed out at 8:41 p.m., not 9:30. Not even close. His office stood nearly 15 minutes from a grocery store where Emily had last been seen. The timeline suddenly became possible. Very possible. But another page complicated everything. Mercer had returned to the building at 9:12 p.m. Why leave? Why return? The original investigators never asked. The log had been overlooked because detectives relied mainly on Mercer's verbal interview rather than company records. It was a small mistake, the kind easily made during a high-profile investigation, the kind that sometimes buried the truth. Mitchell leaned back in her chair. If he lied about his timeline, she stopped. Nobody finished the sentence, because everyone already knew. People lie for many reasons. Embarrassment, affairs, financial problems, personal secrets. Lying alone never proves murder. Yet experienced detectives understood something equally important. Honest witnesses rarely invent unnecessary timelines. The investigation widened. Mercer's former co-workers were located across 4 different states. Some had retired. Others barely remembered 1987. Most described Mercer exactly as expected. Professional, reserved, methodical. One retired receptionist paused unexpectedly during her interview. I always thought he liked Emily. Mitchell looked up. What do you mean? He mentioned her once or twice. How? He said she seemed kind. Did they know each other? I don't know. Did you ever see them together? The woman hesitated. Maybe once. When? I can't remember exactly. But I remember thinking it was odd because Daniel wasn't social. Where? I think outside the grocery store. Memory fades over decades. Investigators treated the statement cautiously. Human recollection changes. Faces blur. Dates disappear. Still, it aligned with the old grocery employee's account. 2 separate witnesses. Neither had known the other. Both suggested Mercer may have spoken with Emily before her death. Meanwhile, forensic specialists reopened every preserved evidence package. Advances in DNA recovery had transformed impossible samples into potential leads. They examined Emily's clothing again. Tiny fibers, microscopic debris, hair fragments, everything. Most samples had degraded beyond usefulness. Time had not been kind, but one laboratory technician noticed several blue synthetic fibers trapped inside the sleeve of Emily's jacket. The fibers had never been identified. In 1987, forensic databases capable of comparing textile manufacturing patterns simply did not exist. Now they did. Weeks later, the laboratory issued its report. The fibers were consistent with commercial automotive carpeting commonly installed inside several mid-size American sedans manufactured during the mid-1980s. Consistent, not unique. Thousands of vehicles matched. It narrowed possibilities. Nothing more. Investigators learned Mercer owned a dark blue 1985 sedan. Records showed he sold the vehicle in 1991. The car no longer existed. Scrapped years earlier. Another possible lead vanished. Mitchell refused to become discouraged. Cold cases rarely collapse because of one missing piece. They survived through persistence, piece by piece, interview by interview, record by record. She visited the abandoned warehouse site. Nothing remained except modern office buildings. Employees walked past carrying laptops and coffee cups, unaware that beneath the concrete parking lot lay the location where one of California's most haunting murders had unfolded. Mitchell stood silently for several minutes. She imagined the rain, the flashing patrol lights, the frightened officers, the fingerprint waiting unnoticed on that maintenance door. Sometimes crime scenes disappear. Truth does not. Back at headquarters, analysts reconstructed Mercer's movements using historical maps, archived traffic patterns, and surviving business records. If he left work at 8:41, he had enough time to reach the grocery store, enough time to encounter Emily, enough time to drive toward the warehouse district, enough time to return before signing back into his office. The schedule fit. Almost too perfectly. Yet one enormous question remained unanswered. Why? Emily had no known enemies, no financial disputes, no romantic involvement with Mercer, no documented connection whatsoever. Without motive, prosecutors would hesitate. Without stronger evidence, juries would question everything. Mitchell instructed investigators to look beyond police records. Sometimes motives never appear in official files. Sometimes they hide inside ordinary lives. Old neighborhood newsletters, school fundraising events, church bulletins, community newspapers, boxes donated to local historical societies. The search became almost archaeological. Then another coincidence surfaced. Or perhaps not a coincidence. Emily had volunteered every Wednesday evening at a literacy program held inside the community center. Attendance sheets survived. So did volunteer records. One name appeared several times among financial advisors, providing free tax assistance to low-income families. Daniel Mercer. The dates overlapped. They had occupied the same building repeatedly during the summer of 1987. Not strangers. Not exactly. Whether they actually interacted remained unknown, but the assumption that they had never met was no longer supported. Mitchell stared at the attendance sheet for a long time. The investigation that once revolved around a mysterious attacker now pointed toward two ordinary people whose lives may have quietly crossed paths months before the murder. Outside headquarters, reporters remained unaware. The case stayed sealed. Investigators wanted facts before headlines, because fingerprints can reveal presence. They cannot reveal intent, and intent was becoming the most dangerous mystery of all. The deeper investigators dug into the lives of Emily Carson and Daniel Mercer, the more unsettling the case became, not because they discovered dramatic confrontations or obvious motives, but because they discovered almost nothing. Two ordinary lives had existed within the same city, crossed the same streets, visited the same grocery store, volunteered in the same community center, and yet left behind almost no record of ever truly knowing each other. For a detective, That kind of silence was often more disturbing than conflict. Mitchell ordered every surviving document from the literacy program to be recovered: attendance sheets, volunteer applications, reimbursement forms, donation receipts, photographs from fundraising events. Anything that could place Emily and Mercer in the same room. Most of the files had been discarded years earlier. A few boxes, forgotten in the basement of the old community center before it was renovated, had survived. Dust covered everything. Inside, one box sat dozens of faded photographs, birthday celebrations, holiday charity drives, volunteer appreciation dinners. Investigators scanned every face, hour after hour, frame after frame. Then one photograph stopped everyone. Taken in August 1987, during a fundraising picnic, Emily stood beside several volunteers, smiling toward the camera. Only a few feet behind her stood Daniel Mercer. He wasn't looking at the photographer. He was looking at Emily. The image alone proved nothing. People glance in different directions all the time. Still, it was the first documented evidence placing both of them together months before the murder. The photograph was enlarged, every face examined, every detail cataloged. A detective noticed something else. Mercer's wife was not present. Neither were his children. Yet volunteer records showed he had attended that event alone. Mitchell tracked down the retired event coordinator. At 83 years old, her memory came and went in fragments. She studied the photograph for nearly a minute before speaking. "I remember Emily." "What about him?" Mitchell asked, pointing toward Mercer. The woman squinted. "He was always quiet." "Did they talk?" "I think everyone talked that day." "Anything unusual?" Another long pause. "He asked me once if Emily was seeing anyone." The room fell silent. "Are you certain?" "I can't swear to it. It was a long time ago. But I remember telling him it wasn't my business." It wasn't enough to establish obsession. It wasn't enough to establish motive. But it was another piece. One more thread connecting two lives once believed unrelated. Investigators widened their search. Emily's closest friends were interviewed again. Several had already passed away. Others struggled to remember details from nearly 4 decades earlier. One former co-worker recalled something curious. Emily had mentioned that an unfamiliar man occasionally appeared outside the school after classes ended. He never spoke to her? "I don't know." "Did she describe him?" "Just a man in office clothes." "Did she seem frightened?" "Not frightened, just uncomfortable." No report had ever been filed. No complaint. No police contact. Back then it seemed too insignificant. Now it sounded different. Mitchell resisted drawing conclusions. Eyewitness memory is fragile, especially after 37 years. She wanted evidence, not assumptions. The task force subpoenaed every surviving employment record from Mercer's accounting firm. Most files were ordinary: performance reviews, salary increases, vacation requests. Then investigators found something unexpected. On October 19, 1987, the morning after Emily's body was discovered, Mercer called in sick. That alone wasn't suspicious. Thousands of innocent people call in sick every day. But according to payroll records, it was the first sick day he had taken in over 3 years. Coincidence? Perhaps. Or perhaps not. The original investigators never knew. The payroll records had remained buried inside company archives until now. Mitchell requested interviews with Mercer's surviving co-workers once again. One retired accountant remembered something that had seemed meaningless at the time. Daniel looked exhausted. When? The Monday after the murder. Anything else? He kept reading the newspaper, over and over. Did he mention the case? He asked whether police had found any suspects. Was that unusual? I guess not. Everyone was talking about it. Another witness remembered Mercer abruptly volunteering to organize old financial storage rooms during the following weekend. He spent nearly 10 hours alone inside company archives. Nobody knew why. Those storage rooms had long since been emptied. Nothing remained to examine. Another opportunity lost. Meanwhile, forensic specialists returned to the fingerprint itself. Using modern enhancement techniques, they reanalyzed pressure distribution across the ridges. The results surprised them. The print had not been left casually. It showed signs of significant downward pressure, as though someone had pushed firmly against a metal door, perhaps opening it, perhaps steadying themselves, perhaps forcing it shut. There was no way to know, but the fingerprint no longer looked like an accidental touch. It looked deliberate. Mitchell visited Mercer under the pretense of reviewing historical witnesses. No arrest warrant, no accusation, just conversation. His home appeared immaculate. Freshly trimmed hedges, polished windows, a quiet suburban street where nothing ever seemed to happen. Mercer answered the door, wearing a light blue sweater. His hair had turned completely white. His posture remained straight, his expression calm. "I've spoken with police before," he said politely. "Many years ago." "We're reviewing older files," Mitchell replied. "It helps to ask everyone again." He invited them inside. Family photographs lined the shelves. Graduations, vacations, Christmas mornings, the life of an ordinary man. Mitchell asked about 1987. Mercer smiled faintly. "That was a lifetime ago." "Do you remember Emily Carson? The teacher?" "Yes. I remember hearing about the murder." "Did you know her?" "I don't think so." "You volunteered at the literacy program." "I've volunteered with many people." "I can't remember everyone." "What about the community picnic?" "I vaguely remember attending." "Did you speak with her?" "I honestly don't know." Mitchell watched every movement, every pause. Mercer never appeared nervous, never defensive. He answered slowly, carefully, almost too carefully. Then came the question, "Have you ever visited the old warehouse district?" He shook his head immediately. "No." "Never." Mitchell held his gaze. "Our records suggest you denied that in 1987 as well. Because it was true. What if we found evidence placing you there?" Mercer's expression remained unchanged. "I couldn't explain evidence that doesn't exist." The interview ended politely. No confrontation. No confession. No mistake. Driving back to headquarters, Mitchell replayed every second in her mind. Experienced detectives often relied on instinct. Hers told her Mercer had prepared for that conversation long before it happened, almost as though he had expected it someday. Weeks later, investigators received another report. A forensic genealogist reviewing archived evidence had extracted an extremely small DNA profile from underneath one of Emily's fingernails. The sample was degraded, incomplete, not suitable for direct identification, but enough to determine one important fact. The contributor was male. The original laboratory in 1987 had never detected it. Technology simply wasn't advanced enough. Hope surged through the task force. Could it belong to Mercer? Scientists compared the degraded profile against a voluntary DNA sample obtained after Mercer agreed to cooperate. The laboratory worked for nearly a month. Finally, the results arrived. Inconclusive. The sample was too damaged. It could neither identify Mercer nor eliminate him. Another dead end. Frustration spread across the investigation. The fingerprint remained the strongest evidence. Strong enough to reopen the case. Not yet strong enough to explain the murder. Mitchell stood before the evidence board late one evening. Emily's smiling school portrait occupied the center. Around hung photographs, timelines, maps, witness interviews, forensic reports, an enlarged fingerprint that had awakened the case after 37 years. Every thread pointed toward Daniel Mercer. Every unanswered question pointed somewhere else. Then an analyst walked quietly into the room, carrying a thin folder. "I think we found something." Mitchell looked up. "What is it?" "A bank statement." "So?" "It wasn't Daniel's." "Whose was it?" "Emily's." The analyst opened the folder. 3 days before she died. Mitchell leaned forward. She withdrew $5,000 in cash. The room became silent. $5,000. In 1987, a remarkable amount of money for an elementary school teacher. The withdrawal had never appeared in the original investigation. No detective had noticed it. No report explained where the money went. No envelope containing cash was found in Emily's car. None was found in her apartment. None was found at the crime scene. The money had simply vanished. And suddenly, investigators were no longer chasing only a fingerprint. They were chasing 40-year-old money that had disappeared the same weekend a young teacher lost her life. The discovery of the missing money changed the investigation overnight. For nearly 4 decades, detectives had treated Emily Carson's murder as an apparently motiveless act of violence. Now, forgotten financial records suggested another possibility. Whether the cash had anything to do with her death remained unknown, but investigators could no longer ignore it. $5,000. In 1987, it represented nearly 4 months of Emily's salary. No teacher withdrew that amount without a reason. Mitchell assembled the task force before sunrise. Every assignment changed. Half the team continued examining Daniel Mercer. The other half chased the money. Where had it gone? Why had Emily withdrawn it? Who knew she had it? Old banking procedures made tracing cash nearly impossible. Electronic records barely existed. Security cameras inside banks recorded over themselves within days. No video survived. The teller who processed a withdrawal had died years earlier. The branch manager had retired to Arizona and remembered nothing unusual about that week. Still, paper records remained. Emily withdrew the money on Thursday afternoon. She signed the withdrawal slip herself. The signature matched perfectly. No forgery. No coercion. She had willingly taken the cash. 3 days later, she was dead. Investigators searched every surviving document from Emily's apartment. Old utility bills, personal calendars, receipts, greeting cards, telephone notebooks. One page inside a small address book caught Mitchell's attention. Written in blue ink was a single reminder. Sunday, 8:30, don't forget the envelope. Nothing else. No name. No address. No explanation. The page had been photographed in 1987. Detectives back then assumed it referred to school paperwork. Nobody followed up. Now it looked different. Very different. The envelope. Could it have contained the cash? If so, who was supposed to receive it? Friends described Emily as financially responsible. She had no gambling debts, no known loans, no expensive habits. Her checking account remained stable for years. The withdrawal stood alone, an isolated event. Mitchell requested Emily's telephone records again. The originals were incomplete, but archive billing summary survived. Most calls were exactly what investigators expected. Parents, co-workers, her mother, the school office. Then one unfamiliar number appeared repeatedly during the week before the murder. 6 calls, each lasting less than 3 minutes. The number belonged to a public payphone, located less than 2 blocks from Daniel Mercer's office. Mitchell stared at the report. Pay phones could not identify callers. Anyone could have used it. Still, the coincidence was impossible to ignore. Investigators searched the original interview transcripts once more. Mercer had never mentioned using public telephones. Nobody had asked. Back in 1987, the pay phone meant nothing. Today it represented another unanswered question. The task force returned to the community center. Most of the building had been renovated years earlier. Only the basement storage rooms remained untouched. Maintenance workers unlocked old filing cabinets that had not been opened in decades. Inside one cabinet rested volunteer registration cards, names, addresses, emergency contacts. Emily's card was there. So was Mercer's. Mitchell compared them side by side. Her eyes stopped on one line. Emergency contact. Emily listed her older sister. Mercer listed his wife. Ordinary. But below that, volunteer assignment preference. Emily requested literacy tutoring. Mercer requested financial counseling. Different programs. Different schedules. Except for 1 week in September. Because of the staffing shortage, volunteers had been temporarily reassigned. Records placed Emily and Mercer in the same classroom for nearly 3 hours. The assignment lasted 1 evening. No further details survived. Mitchell quietly folded the paper. The distance between victim and suspect kept shrinking, not dramatically, just enough. Always enough. Another interview produced an even stranger memory. A retired janitor remembered Locken Community Center one night when he saw Emily arguing softly with a man near the parking lot. He couldn't identify the man. He only remembered one sentence. Emily had said, "No, please don't keep asking." At the time, the janitor assumed it was a disagreement between friends. He drove home. Forgot about it. 37 years later, that forgotten sentence echoed to the investigation. Who had been asking? What did they want? No answer existed. Mitchell requested enhanced analysis of the picnic photograph, modern software estimated body positions, and eye direction. Experts concluded Mercer was almost certainly looking toward Emily when the picture was taken. Again, interesting. Not incriminating. The investigation continued inch by inch. Then another forgotten witness surfaced. A former gas station attendant, 19 years old in 1987, now nearly 60. He contacted police after seeing a television report announcing the case had been reopened. "I don't know if it matters," he told detectives. "Tell us anyway." "I remember a woman crying." "When?" "The night before they found the body." "Where?" "Outside my station." "Did you recognize her?" "No." "But after seeing her picture on TV the next day." He stopped. "I think it was Emily." Mitchell leaned forward. "What happened?" "She was standing beside a blue sedan." "Anyone else?" "A man." "Can you describe him?" "It was dark. He wore a business jacket." "What were they doing?" "They looked like they were arguing." "Did you hear anything?" "No. I was helping another customer. When I looked back, they were gone." The station sat less than a mile from the warehouse. Investigators checked property records. The business had been demolished in the late 1990s. No surveillance footage existed. No receipts. Nothing. Only memory. Fragile. Incomplete. Yet it matched the emerging pattern. Business clothes. A blue sedan. An argument. Mitchell refused to let confirmation bias take control. Every cold case carried enormous danger. Once investigators focused on one suspect, every coincidence seemed meaningful. She instructed analysts to search for alternative explanations. Could someone else have owned a similar car? Yes. Could another volunteer have worked nearby? Yes. Could the fingerprint have been left weeks before the murder? Possibly. Every possibility had to be tested. Science first. Theory second. Then came another forensic review. Investigators re-examined Emily's purse. The contents had been preserved exactly as found. Wallet. Driver's license. Lipstick. School keys. Receipts. A folded grocery list. Nothing unusual. Until a technician removed the paper lining inside one compartment. Hidden beneath it lay a tiny scrap of notebook paper overlooked in 1987. It measured less than 2 inches wide. Only half the writing remained. That meat alone. No police. The beginning had torn away. The end was missing. No signature. No date. No fingerprint. Mitchell felt the investigation shift again. If Emily had received the note, someone wanted secrecy. Someone feared law enforcement. The missing cash. The envelope. The mysterious note. The argument. The fingerprint. Separately, none proved murder. Together, They painted the outline of a meeting that had gone terribly wrong. Still, one question remained larger than all the others. Why had Daniel Mercer lied about never visiting the warehouse? Mitchell decided it was time to confront him again. This interview would be different. Detectives obtained a search warrant for his home. No television cameras. No dramatic arrest. Just quiet police vehicles arriving before dawn. Mercer answered the door, looking surprised but composed. "We have a warrant," Mitchell said. He nodded once. "I understand." Investigators searched every room. Family photo albums. Financial records. Old filing cabinets. Boxes stored in the attic. Nothing suggested violence. Nothing linked him directly to Emily. Then an officer opened a cardboard box filled with documents from the 1980s. Tax returns. Insurance forms. Vehicle registrations. And beneath them, a small leather-bound appointment planner dated 1987. Mitchell carefully turned each page. Meetings. Client names. Business lunches. Ordinary entries. Until October 18th. The page had been torn out. Not damaged. Not loose. Removed cleanly. Every other day remained intact. Only the page covering the night Emily died was missing. Mitchell slowly looked up. Across the room, Daniel Mercer stood silently watching. For the first time since the investigation reopened, his calm expression began to crack. For nearly a minute, no one in the room spoke. The torn page lay between Detective Laura Mitchell and Daniel Mercer like a silent accusation. It was only a missing sheet from an old planner. By itself, it proved absolutely nothing. People removed pages for countless innocent reasons. Shopping lists, telephone numbers, personal reminders. Yet investigators had searched thousands of planners over the years. Rarely did a single missing page coincide precisely with the night of an unsolved homicide. Mitchell closed the planner carefully. "When did you remove this page?" Mercer looked at it without touching it. "I don't remember." "Was it before or after October 18th? "I honestly couldn't tell you." "Why remove only that page?" "I don't know if I did." "You don't remember tearing it out?" He shook his head. It was almost 40 years ago. His answer was reasonable. Frustratingly reasonable. The search continued. Investigators photographed every document before returning them to evidence bags. Inside another storage box, they found several check registers, old insurance paperwork, and maintenance receipts for Mercer's 1985 sedan. Nothing unusual. Then an evidence technician paused. One receipt came from a car detailing business. The date immediately caught everyone's attention. October 20th, 1987, 2 days after Emily's murder. The invoice described a complete interior shampoo, upholstery cleaning, and odor removal treatment. Mitchell frowned. How often did he detail the car? Analysts searched the remaining records. Only once. The vehicle had been washed regularly, but a full interior cleaning appeared nowhere else in 4 years of receipts. Again, it could be innocent. Spilled coffee, a sick child, flood damage, anything. Still, detectives added it to the growing timeline. Mercer left work early. Emily disappeared. Mercer called in sick the following morning. 2 days later, he paid for an unusually thorough cleaning of his car. No single fact established guilt. Together, they demanded explanation. Mitchell contacted the detailing company. The business had changed ownership twice. Old paper records survived only because a retired owner had stored them in his garage instead of destroying them. He remembered nothing about Mercer, but one handwritten notation on the invoice stood out. Customer requested immediate service. Waiting on site. Apparently, Mercer had insisted the cleaning be performed as soon as the shop opened. Why the urgency? No one knew. The team returned to forensic evidence. Although the sedan had been scrapped decades earlier, investigators wondered whether the cleaning chemicals used in 1987 match fibers recovered from Emily's jacket. Laboratory experts concluded there was no reliable way to make such comparison after so many years. Another promising path ended. Mitchell refused to slow down. She believed the investigation had reached a critical point. Somewhere in a mountain of forgotten records was the missing link, not a dramatic confession, not a surprise eyewitness. Something quieter, something overlooked. She ordered analysts to reconstruct Mercer's life week by week during the autumn of 1987. Every appointment, every bank transaction, every fuel purchase, every phone call that could still be documented. The picture that emerged surprised everyone. Mercer had withdrawn $5,000 in cash from his own bank account, one day before Emily withdrew the exact same amount from hers. The room fell silent. The coincidence was astonishing. Two people, no publicly known relationship, each withdrawing exactly $5,000 within 24 hours of one another. Mitchell immediately cautioned the team. Coincidences happen, but we don't ignore them. The banks confirmed both withdrawals. Neither record explained the purpose. Neither customer deposited similar amounts afterward. Whatever happened to the money? It disappeared. Investigators developed multiple theories. Perhaps Emily planned to buy a car. Perhaps Mercer intended to make an investment. Perhaps the amounts had nothing to do with one another. Without evidence, every theory remained speculation. Then another overlooked document surfaced. Emily's sister had given detectives a small box of personal papers in 1987. Most had already been examined. One sealed envelope had not. It contained birthday cards and handwritten notes from friends. Among them sat a folded piece of stationery with no signature. The handwriting was neat, deliberate. Only 3 sentences appeared. I know this is difficult. Please trust me. Everything will be over after Sunday. No date. No name. The handwriting had never been compared against anyone. Modern forensic document examiners began their analysis immediately. Meanwhile, detectives revisited Mercer. This time, they showed him copies of the withdrawal records. He studied them quietly. Yes, he said. I withdrew money. What for? I don't remember. $5,000? I handle finances. Cash withdrawals weren't unusual. They were for you. He remained silent. Mitchell slid another document across the table. Emily's withdrawal receipt. His eyes rested on it slightly longer than expected. Did you know she withdrew the same amount? No. Can you explain the coincidence? No. It could simply be coincidence. It could... Again, his answer was technically correct. The interview continued for another hour. Mercer never raised his voice, never became angry, never demanded a lawyer, yet every answer seemed measured, carefully limited, as though he had spent years deciding exactly how much to reveal. Back at headquarters, handwriting experts completed their preliminary review. The unsigned note could not be conclusively linked to Mercer. However, several letter formations resembled entries inside his 1987 appointment planner. Not enough for courtroom identification. Enough to justify deeper examination. Another small thread. Another unanswered question. Mitchell spent that evening rereading Emily's journal. Most entries described ordinary life. Lesson plans. Family dinners. Weekend errands. Then, roughly 2 weeks before the murder, one sentence caught her attention. Some people refused to hear the word no. Nothing else explained it. No names. No context. Just one sentence. Mitchell underlined it. If Emily had been referring to Mercer, it suggested unwanted attention. If she had been referring to someone else, the entire investigation could still be heading in the wrong direction. She refused to make assumptions. The next breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A retired newspaper photographer contacted police after seeing media coverage of the reopened case. I covered the murder scene, he explained. I kept copies of everything. The department already possessed official crime scene photographs. But freelance photographers often captured images from different angles before police secured the perimeter. Mitchell drove to meet him personally. Boxes of negatives filled his garage. Thousands of forgotten photographs. The photographer carefully sorted through them until he found the envelope marked October 1987. The images were developed using modern scanning equipment. Most revealed nothing new. Police cars. Yellow tape. Crowds gathering behind barricades. Then one frame stopped everyone. Taken from across the street. Hours before sunrise. A dark blue sedan appeared parked nearly 100 yards from the warehouse. Too distant to identify the license plate. Too blurry to identify the driver. But one detail remained surprisingly clear. The rear passenger side hubcap was missing. Vehicle registration records showed Mercer's sedan had been reported with. Got a missing rear passenger side hubcap. Mitchell stared at the enlarged image. The laboratory confirmed only one thing. The photograph was authentic. Whether the vehicle actually belonged to Mercer could never be stated with certainty. It was another coincidence. Another possibility. Another shadow refusing to disappear. Late that night, Mitchell returned alone to the evidence room. She stood before Emily's photograph once again. The investigation no longer looked impossible. It looked incomplete. A fingerprint, 2 identical cash withdrawals, a missing planner page, a mysterious note, an unusual car cleaning, an old photograph. Each clue seemed to point toward the same man, yet none answered the question that mattered most. Why? Then her phone rang. It was a forensic accountant reviewing Mercer's archived financial records. His voice sounded unusually tense. I think we found something bigger. What is it? There was another account. What kind of account? A private investment account. So, it wasn't reported anywhere during the original investigation. Mitchell's heartbeat quickened. How much money? The accountant took a breath. The balance suddenly increased. He paused. By almost $5,000. And you know when? Mitchell already feared the answer. The accountant quietly replied. 3 days after Emily Carson was murdered. The room went completely silent after the accountant finished speaking. 3 days after Emily Carson was murdered, Daniel Mercer's private investment account increased by almost exactly $5,000. The same amount Emily had withdrawn before her death. The same amount Mercer had withdrawn shortly before the murder. A number that had appeared twice in the investigation had now appeared a third time, $5,000. For 37 years, it had been hiding inside separate records, bank statements, withdrawal slips, financial documents, 3 unrelated pieces of paper that suddenly formed a disturbing pattern. But investigators knew better than anyone. Patterns could deceive. A coincidence could look like a confession if examined the wrong way. Mitchell demanded every detail. When was the deposit made? October 21st, 1987. Source: unknown. Cash: yes. Can you identify the person who deposited it? No. Was Mercer the only account holder? Yes. The account existed under Mercer's name alone. The deposit had been made at a branch nearly 30 miles away from his workplace. No camera footage survived. No teller remembered. No receipt remained. Another door had opened. Another door had closed. Mitchell returned to headquarters before dawn. The evidence board had transformed from a collection of disconnected mysteries into something far more dangerous. A possible financial motive. A possible hidden relationship. A possible attempt to conceal the truth. But prosecutors would not build a murder case on the word possible. They needed proof. The investigation turned toward Emily's final week. What had she been doing? Who had she spoken with? Where had she gone? Every hour mattered. Detectives rebuilt her movements. Monday, normal. Tuesday, normal. Wednesday, a late meeting at school. Thursday, bank withdrawal. Friday, volunteer program. Saturday, several unanswered hours. Sunday evening, gone. The missing pieces were concentrated in one small window. Saturday night, the night before her death. Investigators searched Emily's old phone records again. One call stood out, a pay phone near Mercer's office. The call lasted only 47 seconds. The time, 6:18 p.m., Saturday, the night before the murder. Who called whom? Impossible to know, but the location was becoming impossible to ignore. Mitchell requested a search of Mercer's archived telephone records. Most had been destroyed. One document survived, a personal notebook recovered during the home search. Mercer had written down phone numbers manually. Several were business contacts. Several belonged to friends. One number appeared without a name. The same payphone. The entry had been written 3 days before Emily's death. No explanation. No notes. Just a number. The investigators felt the weight of the discovery. Mercer knew the phone. He had recorded it. He had some reason to keep it. But what reason? The team brought Mercer back for another interview. This time, the atmosphere was different. The polite conversation was gone. The questions were direct. Why did you write down this number? Mercer looked at the paper. His face remained calm. I don't remember. You don't remember a phone number? Not after 40 years. Did you call this pay phone? I don't know. Did Emily Carson call you from this number? A pause. Small. Almost invisible. But everyone noticed. I don't know. Mitchell leaned forward. Daniel, a fingerprint placed you at the warehouse. I told you I don't know how. Your car may have been near the scene. May have been. You withdrew $5,000 before the murder. So did she. Your account received $5,000 after her death. I don't know why. You cleaned your car 2 days after. That proves nothing. No. It doesn't. But everything together is becoming difficult to explain. Mercer looked down. For the first time, he appeared tired, not frightened, not angry, just tired. I have spent my whole life knowing this day might come. The room became still. Mitchell carefully watched him. What day? The day someone decides they already know the answer. Do you expect me to believe you are innocent? I expect you to prove I'm guilty. The interview ended. No confession. No arrest. But something had changed. Mercer was no longer simply a person of interest. He was the center of the investigation. The district attorney reviewed the evidence. The conclusion was frustrating. There was enough for suspicion, not enough for charges. The fingerprint was powerful, but fingerprints prove contact, not murder. The money was suspicious, but suspicious is not illegal. The timeline was concerning, but concern is not conviction. The case remained suspended. Again, Mitchell refused to accept another failure. She returned to the original crime scene photographs. She studied the warehouse door, the fingerprint, the angle, the height. Something bothered her. The print was on the inside edge of the maintenance door, not the outside. That meant whoever left it was likely standing inside the warehouse, not outside. The original investigators assumed the killer entered through that door. But what if that assumption was wrong? What if someone had been inside before Emily arrived? She ordered a complete reconstruction. The warehouse layout, the entrances, the windows, the possible paths. The results surprised everyone. The maintenance door was not the easiest way inside. It was the easiest way to hide. A person standing inside the warehouse could see anyone approaching from the service road without being noticed. The fingerprint may not have belonged to someone breaking in. It may have belonged to someone waiting for Emily. A new theory formed. Emily may not have been randomly attacked. She may have agreed to meet someone she knew, someone she trusted enough to follow into that dark place. The investigation returned to the anonymous note. I know this is difficult. Please trust me. Everything will be over after Sunday. The phrase changed meaning. If Emily believed she was meeting someone to resolve a problem, She might have gone willingly. She might not have realized the danger. The handwriting analysis continued. Experts compared the note with dozens of known samples. Mercer's handwriting showed similarities, but similarities were not identification. The examiner needed more. Then another discovery emerged. Emily's sister found an old box stored in her attic. She had forgotten about it for decades. Inside were letters Emily had written during her final year of life. Most were ordinary. Family updates, school stories, personal thoughts. One letter had never been sent. It was addressed to someone who needs to understand. No name. The letter was unfinished. The first line read, "I never wanted this to become something ugly." Investigators carefully examined every word. The second sentence was more disturbing. "You promised me it would end." The letter ended abruptly. No signature. No conclusion. But now a terrifying possibility emerged. Emily may not have been dealing with a stranger. She may have been trapped in a situation that had been escalating for months, and someone had promised her it would stop. The task force searched every surviving record connected to Emily's relationships, former classmates, co-workers, neighbors, volunteers. One name repeatedly appeared in old social calendars. Not Daniel Mercer. Someone else. A man whose name had never appeared in the original investigation. A man who had moved out of California only weeks after Emily's death. A man who had never been interviewed. When detectives located him, they discovered something shocking. He had a connection to Daniel Mercer. A financial connection. A business connection. And possibly a connection to the missing $5,000. The investigation that had focused on one unlikely suspect for months suddenly opened another direction, because maybe Daniel Mercer wasn't the person who left a fingerprint. Maybe he was only protecting someone else. And somewhere inside the forgotten pages of 1987, the real reason Emily Carson died was still waiting to be uncovered. The name that appeared in the old records was Thomas Avery. Unlike Daniel Mercer, Avery was not a respected figure in the community, but he was not a criminal either, at least not officially. In 1987, Thomas Avery was 34 years old and worked as a freelance property consultant. He specialized in helping small businesses purchase abandoned buildings, negotiate contracts, and manage financial transitions. His name appeared only briefly in the original investigation. A single line inside an interview summary. Thomas Avery, interviewed regarding warehouse ownership records. No connection established. The original detectives had moved on quickly. Avery had seemed irrelevant. But 37 years later, investigators saw the sentence differently. No connection established. Not the same as no connection existed. The reopened investigation uncovered that Avery had handled financial paperwork related to the abandoned warehouse district. He knew the buildings. He knew the access points. He knew which doors were unlocked. And most importantly, he knew Daniel Mercer. The two men had worked together on several small investment projects during the late 1980s. They were not close friends. They were business associates. The kind of relationship that often leaves behind paperwork. And paperwork was exactly what investigators found. A partnership agreement from September 1987, 1 month before Emily's murder. Mercer had invested money into a property venture managed by Avery. The amount? $5,000. The same amount appearing throughout the case. Investigators immediately questioned whether the money connected Emily to the business arrangement, but the evidence was unclear. Mercer's withdrawal, Emily's withdrawal, the post-murder deposit, 3 separate financial events, one number, one mystery. Mitchell contacted Avery. He agreed to an interview. He was now 71 years old, living quietly in Oregon. When investigators arrived at his home, they noticed something immediately. Avery was nervous before they even mentioned the case. "You know why we're here," Mitchell said. Avery looked toward the floor. "I assumed someone would eventually ask." The sentence surprised her. "Why?" "Because of Daniel." Why because of Daniel? Avery remained silent. The interview changed direction. What was your relationship with Daniel Mercer? Business. Only business? Mostly. Did you know Emily Carson? Avery hesitated. I knew who she was. How? Everyone knew about the murder. That's not what I asked. Avery looked away. She volunteered at the community center. Did you ever meet her? No. The answer came too quickly. Mitchell noticed. Are you sure? Yes. Because we found records placing you near the community center during that period. I worked in that area. Did Emily ever contact you? No. Did Daniel ever mention her? Another pause. Not until after she died. The room became quiet. What did he say? Avery rubbed his hands together. He asked me if I had heard anything. Anything about what? The investigation. Why would he ask you? I don't know. Because you had nothing to do with it? Yes. Or because you knew something? Avery said nothing. Investigators left the interview without an arrest, but they left with something valuable. Avery had confirmed one thing. Daniel Mercer and Thomas Avery discussed Emily Carson after murder. The original investigation never knew. Back at headquarters, Mitchell reviewed every connection between the two men. The timeline became more complicated. Avery had access to the warehouse. Mercer had the fingerprint. Emily had the money. Someone had deposited $5,000 into Mercer's account after the murder. Now a second person existed inside the mystery. The possibility of a larger conspiracy emerged. The district attorney demanded caution. Cold cases often create illusions. Two suspicious people do not automatically equal two guilty people. Investigators needed to know exactly what happened on October 18, 1987. They returned the warehouse, not the current location. The original blueprints. The building had contained multiple storage rooms. One room stood apart from the others. A small office hidden behind the maintenance corridor. The room had no windows. No obvious purpose. But according to old property records, Avery had access to it. Why? Because he once used it to store documents during a failed real estate project. The original detectives searched the warehouse thoroughly, but they focused on the murder scene, not the surrounding spaces. The hidden office had been empty, or so everyone believed. A forensic review of old photographs revealed something unusual. A filing cabinet inside the office was partially open. At the time, investigators assumed it belonged to the abandoned building, but property records showed the cabinet had been removed after the murder. Nobody documented what was inside. Nobody knew where it went. The contents had vanished. A missing cabinet, a missing planner page, a missing envelope, a missing $5,000. Too many missing pieces. Investigators began searching Avery's old business records. Most had disappeared, but one archive box survived in a storage facility outside Portland. Inside were decades-old contracts, property maps, client information, and one handwritten note dated October 17, 1987, the day before Emily's death. The note contained only one sentence. Sunday meeting moved. Same location. Bring documents. No name. No signature. But the location was written beneath it. The old warehouse address. Mitchell stared at the page. The mystery was changing again. Emily may not have been lured to the warehouse. She may have gone there for a meeting involving documents. And money. The next question became obvious. What documents? Investigators searched Emily's belongings again. This time they focused on her work as a teacher. School records, personal files, volunteer documents. They found something unusual. 3 weeks before her death, Emily had requested copies of old financial paperwork from the community center. Why would a teacher need financial records? Nobody knew. The community center director at the time had died. The current administration had no explanation, but the request existed. Written in Emily's handwriting. The date matched the beginning of her conflict with someone, the same period when her journal changed. the same period when she wrote. Some people refused to hear the word no. Mitchell started to believe Emily had discovered something involving money, something involving documents, something that made someone afraid. The investigation shifted away from a random murder. Emily Carson may have uncovered a secret powerful enough to silence her. Investigators returned to Mercer. This time, they focused less on proving he was a killer. They focused on understanding his relationship with Avery. Mercer's financial history revealed another surprise. Between 1986 and 1987, he transferred several large payments to Avery's property company. But after Emily's death, those payments stopped. Completely, a business relationship that had existed for years ended within weeks. Why? No one knew. Mercer refused another interview. His attorney issued a statement saying that after decades of cooperation, Mercer believed investigators were unfairly targeting him based on incomplete evidence. The statement ended with one sentence. Mr. Mercer has spent 37 years living with a tragedy he did not commit. The media finally learned the case had reopened. Headlines exploded. California cold case takes shocking turn. Decades-old fingerprint revives murder investigation. Former accountant questioned after new evidence. The public reacted instantly. Some believed Mercer was guilty. Others defended him. Neighbors described him as impossible to imagine committing violence. But investigators knew something the public did not. The case was no longer about whether Daniel Mercer looked guilty. It was about what happened behind closed doors in 1987. And the answer was hidden somewhere between three people: Emily Carson, Daniel Mercer, Thomas Avery. Then forensic analysts discovered something inside the anonymous note, a detail missed for nearly 40 years, a microscopic indentation beneath the paper, a pressure mark left by another page written on top of it. Using specialized imaging technology, investigators reconstructed the hidden writing. The words were incomplete, but 3 letters were visible, a name fragment: Tom. For the first time, evidence did not point only toward Mercer. It pointed toward Thomas Avery. And suddenly, the man who had once been considered irrelevant became the person investigators feared they had overlooked from the very beginning. The discovery of the hidden name fragment changed the entire direction of the investigation. For months, Daniel Mercer had been the center of every theory. His fingerprint, his timeline, his missing planner page, his unexplained money. Every road seemed to lead back to him. Then 3 letters appeared. Tom. A name hidden beneath the surface of a forgotten note. A name that had been buried for 37 years. Thomas Avery. The man who had never been considered a serious suspect. The man who had been mentioned only once in the original investigation. The man who had quietly disappeared from California shortly after Emily Carson's death. Mitchell immediately ordered a complete re-examination of Avery's history. Not rumors. Not assumptions. Facts. Every business record. Every property transaction. Every financial connection. Every address. Every person connected to him. The first discovery came from a company registration file. In 1987, Avery operated a small consulting business called Westbridge Property Solutions. On paper, the company helped investors purchase and renovate abandoned commercial buildings. But investigators discovered something strange. The company had almost no legitimate clients. Most of its money came from private investors. One of those investors was Daniel Mercer. Another was a silent partner whose name appeared nowhere in the original investigation, a man named Richard Cole. Richard Cole had died in 2009, but his financial record survived, and those records revealed something disturbing. 3 weeks before Emily's death, Cole transferred $10,000 into Avery's business account. 2 days later, Avery transferred $5,000 to Mercer. Then, after Emily's murder, Mercer's account received $5,000 in cash. The money trail was incomplete, but the pattern was becoming impossible to dismiss. Investigators now believed the missing money might not have been stolen from Emily. It might have been connected to a larger financial arrangement, a deal a secret, something Emily discovered. The next step was understanding why she was involved. Detectives searched Emily's personal files again. They found copies of letters she had written to the community center board. The letters were polite, professional, but the tone changed over time. The first letter asked simple questions, financial questions, where donations were being allocated, why certain expenses had increased, why volunteer funds were being moved between accounts. The second letter was more direct. She requested a full review of financial records. The third letter was never sent. Only a draft remained. The opening sentence was chilling. I cannot continue pretending I do not know what is happening. Investigators stared at the document. Emily was not searching for personal answers. She was investigating something. The question became, what had she found? The community center had received thousands of dollars in donations every year. Much of it came from local businesses, including companies connected to Daniel Mercer and Thomas Avery. Emily was a volunteer. She had access to basic financial documents. She was not an accountant. She was not a detective, but she was organized, and she noticed things other people ignored. Missing receipts, unexplained transfers, payments that did not match official records. The investigation developed a new theory. Emily discovered financial misconduct involving people she trusted. She confronted someone. Someone tried to make the problem disappear, and the confrontation ended with murder. But who killed her? Mercer? Avery? Both? Or someone else entirely? Investigators returned to the warehouse, the place where everything ended. Modern technology allowed them to recreate the building digitally. The maintenance door, the hidden office, the loading area, the route from the street, the location where Emily's body was found. Then analysts noticed something. The fingerprint on the maintenance door was positioned at shoulder height. The person who left it was likely standing inside the building, facing outward, waiting. The question was no longer how someone entered. The question was, who was waiting for Emily? Avery knew the warehouse. Mercer had the fingerprint. Both had possible motives. But only one person had a documented reason to meet someone there, Thomas Avery. The handwritten note mentioned a Sunday meeting. The warehouse address, bring documents. The date matched the day Emily disappeared. Investigators searched Avery's old phone records. Unlike Mercer, Avery's records showed one surviving call. A call made the evening before the murder, to a public phone near Emily's home. The duration, 1 minute and 12 seconds. The same pay phone connected to the earlier mystery calls. Mitchell felt the case shifting again. Emily had been communicating with someone using public phones, someone avoiding a direct connection. The original investigators had focused on strangers. They never considered that the people involved may have been hiding behind ordinary appearances. Avery was interviewed again. This time, he was not calm. He appeared frustrated. I already told you everything. You told us you didn't know Emily. I didn't. You knew she was investigating the community center. Avery said nothing. Why? Because everyone knew. Everyone. People talked. About what? About money. The room became quiet. What money? Avery looked toward the window. I don't know. You're lying. You can't prove that. Maybe not. But we can prove you were connected to the financial records Emily questioned. Avery leaned back. That doesn't mean I killed her. No. It doesn't. But it means you had a reason to fear what you found. Avery shook his head. You have no idea what happened. The sentence caught Mitchell's attention. Not. I don't know what happened. Not. I had nothing to do with it. Instead, you have no idea what happened. A statement that suggested knowledge. Then tell us. Avery remained silent. The interview ended. But detectives left with something more valuable than a confession. They left with doubt. Avery was hiding something. The question was what? The investigation searched Avery's former residences. Most were gone. But one property remained connected to him, a storage unit outside Sacramento. The unit had been abandoned for years. Inside were old business documents, photographs, and personal belongings. Among the items was a locked metal box. Inside the box, a collection of letters, a newspaper clipping about Emily Carson's murder, and a photograph. The photograph showed Emily standing outside the community center, talking with someone. The image quality was poor, but investigators enhanced it. The person standing beside her was clearly visible, Thomas Avery. The date on the back of the photograph, September 14th, 1987, 1 month before the murder. The discovery changed everything. Avery had not simply known about Emily. He had interacted with her, frequently enough to appear in a photograph, yet he denied ever meeting her. The lie was finally confirmed. Investigators returned to the storage unit evidence. The metal box contained one final item, a small envelope. No address, no name, only a handwritten message. If anything happens to me, look at the records. Inside was a single piece of paper, a list of dates, payments, names, and at the bottom, Emily Carson's signature. She had created a record of everything she believed was wrong, a record someone desperately wanted destroyed. The case had finally found its center, not a random attack, not a mystery with no motive, a hidden financial scheme, a secret partnership, and a woman who discovered too much. But one question remained. If Emily had uncovered the truth, why did the evidence keep pointing to Daniel Mercer? Because the fingerprint belonged to him, because the money reached his account, because the story contained holes. And now investigators face the most difficult possibility of all. Thomas Avery may have had the motive, but Daniel Mercer may have been the person who stood at the door that night. And if that was true, then the cold case was not about finding one killer. It was about uncovering two people who had spent nearly 4 decades protecting the same secret. For 37 years, the murder of Emily Carson had been described as a mystery without direction, a teacher killed in the darkness, a fingerprint with no owner, a crime scene with no witnesses, a case buried beneath decades of silence. But now investigators were looking at something far more complicated. Emily had not been randomly chosen. She had found something. She had documented something. And before she died, she had tried to make sure the truth survived. The metal box recovered from Thomas Avery's abandoned storage unit became the most important discovery in the investigation. Inside were financial records that should not have existed, copies of documents, handwritten notes, meeting schedules, and a personal timeline Emily had created herself. Detectives carefully examined every page. The handwriting was unmistakably Emily's. The dates matched transactions from the community center. The names matched people connected to the financial network. One name appeared repeatedly, Daniel Mercer. Another appeared even more frequently, Thomas Avery. Emily had not been investigating strangers. She had been investigating people she knew. The documents revealed a pattern. Money donated to the community center was allegedly being transferred through several small businesses before returning through investment accounts. On paper, the transactions looked legitimate, but Emily noticed something. Some payments existed only in records, not in reality. Supplies that were never purchased, services that were never provided, invoices connected to companies that had no employees. She had uncovered a system designed to hide money in plain sight. The community center was not just a place where people gathered. It had become the center of a financial scheme. Emily had written one sentence in her notes. They believe nobody checks because nobody cares. That sentence changed how investigators viewed her final days. She was not afraid because someone disliked her. She was afraid because she knew something, and someone knew she knew. The next major breakthrough came from analyzing the hidden documents. One transaction immediately stood out. October 17th, 1987, the day before Emily disappeared. A payment of $10,000 was transferred from an account connected to Avery's business, The Destination, an account controlled by Daniel Mercer. The reason? Consulting services. But investigators found no evidence any consulting work had occurred. Then came the most disturbing detail. The payment was divided. $5,000 remained in Mercer's account. $5,000 was withdrawn in cash. The exact amount Emily withdrew before her death. Investigators believe they were finally seeing the outline of the plan, but they still lacked the most important piece. Who actually killed Emily? The evidence against Mercer remained strong. His fingerprint, his false statement, his financial connection, the vehicle possibly seen near the scene, the car cleaning afterward. But Avery's involvement was growing. He had lied about knowing Emily. He had access to the warehouse. He had created the financial system she uncovered. The possibility of two people working together became impossible to ignore. Mitchell requested a full background investigation into Avery and Mercer as a pair. The results revealed something unexpected. They had known each other for more than 10 years. Not casually. Closely. They met through a failed property investment in the late 1970s. Over the years, they built a pattern. Avery handled property deals. Mercer handled finances. Together, they moved money through complicated networks. Nothing illegal had ever been proven until Emily began asking questions. Investigators contacted former employees of Avery's companies. One former assistant provided a statement that changed everything. I remember Daniel being afraid of Thomas. Afraid? Yes. Why? Because Thomas always controlled the money. Daniel was the accountant. Why would he be afraid? The woman looked down. Because Daniel knew too much. The statement created a new possibility. Maybe Mercer was not the mastermind. Maybe he was trapped. Maybe he was involved, but not in control. The investigation returned to the fingerprint. Forensic experts examined the location where it was found. The maintenance door was not near the body. It was inside a narrow corridor. Someone standing there would have been separated from the main warehouse area. The killer could have waited there unseen, but investigators noticed something else. The fingerprint was not mixed with other prints. No fingerprints from workers. No fingerprints from trespassers. Only one clear print. Mercer's. Why? Because someone had cleaned the door. The original investigators never considered it, but modern analysis showed something unusual. The surrounding surface contained old dust patterns, except around the fingerprint. A small area had been wiped. Someone had cleaned the door before leaving, except for one place, the fingerprint. A deliberate mistake, a message, or an accident. Nobody knew, but one possibility emerged. Someone wanted investigators to find Mercer's fingerprint. The print might not have been left by the killer. It might have been planted. The discovery shocked the task force. For years, everyone assumed the fingerprint was the answer. Now it might have been the biggest deception in the entire case. Mitchell immediately ordered another interview with Mercer. This time, she brought evidence of Avery's involvement. Mercer sat quietly as photographs of the documents were placed in front of him. His expression changed. Not fear, recognition. You knew about this. Silence. Daniel. I knew Thomas had problems. Financial problems? Yes. Did Emily discover them? Another silence. Did she confront you? Mercer closed his eyes briefly. She was a good person. The answer confused investigators. That's not what I asked. No. He looked toward the table. You don't understand. Then explain. Mercer finally spoke. I tried to stop it. Stop what? What Thomas was doing. Why didn't you tell police? His voice became quieter. Because I was afraid. Of Thomas? Yes. Or because you were involved? Mercer did not answer. That silence was more revealing than any statement. Investigators pushed harder. What happened that night? Mercer looked exhausted. I didn't kill Emily. Did you meet her? Another pause. Yes. The room froze. For 37 years, Mercer denied knowing her. Now he admitted they met. When? That night. Where? The warehouse. Why? She asked me to come. Why would she ask you? Because she thought I could help. Help with what? Mercer looked down. The money. Did Avery know about the meeting? No answer. Daniel. He knew. The confession changed the entire case. Mercer had finally admitted he was there, but he still denied murder. He claimed Emily contacted him because she discovered the financial scheme. She believed Mercer was the only person who could help expose Avery. According to Mercer, he arrived at the warehouse expecting a conversation, not a confrontation, not violence. But when he arrived, Emily was already afraid. She said Thomas had threatened her. Mercer continued. She said he knew she had the documents. Then what happened? I heard someone behind me. Who? Mercer looked up. Thomas. The name hung in the room. Did Thomas attack her? Mercer closed his eyes. I don't remember everything. How convenient. I remember Emily falling. After Thomas hit her? Silence. Daniel. I said I don't remember. The investigators knew they had reached a critical point. Mercer had finally broken 37 years of silence. But his story created another mystery. If Thomas Avery killed Emily, why was Mercer's fingerprint the only one found? Why did the money end up in his account? Why did he lie for decades? And why did he allow the world to believe he was a killer? Because maybe he was protecting Avery. Or maybe he was protecting himself. The next morning, investigators returned to Thomas Avery. But this time, they were no longer asking questions. They were preparing an arrest. Because after 37 years, the cold case was finally moving toward the truth. And the truth was far darker than anyone expected. The arrest warrant for Thomas Avery was prepared before sunrise. After 37 years of unanswered questions, investigators finally believed they understood the hidden structure behind Emily Carson's death. But believing was not enough. Cold cases were built on patience, not emotion, not anger, not the desire to close a chapter. Every piece had to survive the courtroom. Every accusation had to be supported. Every memory had to be tested. The evidence against Avery was powerful. The financial scheme, the hidden documents, the lies about knowing Emily, the warehouse connection, the anonymous note, the photograph, the testimony from Daniel Mercer. But one problem remained. The prosecution needed to explain one thing above everything else. Why was Daniel Mercer's fingerprint found at the scene? Because a jury would ask the same question investigators had asked for decades. If Thomas Avery was responsible, why did the evidence point toward Mercer? The answer came from Mercer himself. But it was not the answer anyone expected. After his confession, Mercer agreed to provide a full statement. Not a deal, not immunity, just the truth. For the first time in 37 years, he described what happened on October 18th, 1987. He said Emily contacted him because she had discovered financial irregularities connected to the community center. She believed Avery was moving donated money through fake companies. She believed Mercer had unknowingly helped create the system. Mercer admitted that part. He had handled financial documents. He had processed payments. He had ignored questions he should have asked. But he claimed he never knew the full scale of the operation. Emily wanted to expose everything. She believed Mercer could help her prove it. That was why she asked him to meet at the warehouse, away from other people, away from anyone connected to Avery. Mercer told investigators he arrived around 9:30 p.m. The weather was already getting worse. Rain covered the streets. Emily was waiting near the entrance. She carried a folder. Inside were copies of financial records. She was angry, but not afraid. At least not at first. Then Avery arrived. Mercer said Avery had followed him, or perhaps had followed Emily. He did not know. But the moment Avery appeared, everything changed. According to Mercer, Avery demanded the documents. Emily refused. The argument escalated. Then violence began. Mercer claimed he stepped away. He claimed he tried to stop it. But he admitted one thing. He touched the maintenance door. He entered the warehouse. He was there. The fingerprint finally had an explanation. Not planted. Not fake. Mercer had left it. But he insisted he was not the killer. Investigators asked a question that had haunted the case. Why didn't you call police? Mercer had no simple answer. Because there wasn't one. Fear. Guilt. Shame. Self-preservation. All of it existed at the same time. I knew if I told the truth, my life was over, Mercer said. You were afraid of prison? No. He looked down. I was afraid everyone would know what I had done. That statement became one of the most important moments in the investigation, because Mercer was admitting something, not murder, but involvement. He had hidden the truth. He had protected a criminal. He had allowed Emily's family to wait decades for answers. The investigators still needed confirmation. They needed Avery. Thomas Avery was arrested outside his home in Oregon on a quiet Tuesday morning. There were no dramatic scenes, no shouting, no escape attempt. He simply looked at the officers approaching his driveway, as if he had been expecting them. The news spread within hours. Headlines appeared across the country. 37-year cold case cracked. Arrest shocks California community. Forgotten fingerprint leads police to unexpected suspect. Teacher's murder investigation takes stunning turn. For the first time in decades, Emily Carson's name was everywhere again, but for her family. The attention came with complicated emotions. They had wanted answers. They had prayed for justice. But they never expected the truth to involve people Emily had trusted. The trial preparation lasted months. Prosecutors built their case carefully. They did not portray Avery as a mysterious monster. They described something more realistic. A man who built a financial scheme. A man who feared exposure. A man who chose silence over accountability. The defense attacked the investigation. They questioned old memories. They challenged the reliability of decades-old evidence. They argued that Mercer was responsible and was blaming Avery to save himself. That argument created a major problem for prosecutors, because Mercer was not innocent. He had lied. For decades, the defense repeated the same phrase again and again. How can anyone believe a man who spent 37 years hiding the truth? The prosecution had no perfect answer, because it was true. Mercer had hidden the truth. The question was whether he had hidden it because he was guilty of murder or because he was guilty of fear. The jury heard every detail. The fingerprint, the money, the documents, the witnesses, the photographs, the hidden note, the financial records. The final piece came from a forensic review of the old planner page removed from Mercer's 1987 calendar. Experts examined the torn edges. They discovered something unexpected. The page had been removed recently, not in 1987. The planner had been damaged decades later. Someone had attempted to hide the contents after the investigation reopened. The question became, who had access? Mercer? Avery? Or someone protecting them? Investigators traced the damage. The planner had been stored in Mercer's home until the search warrant. No one else had access. Mercer had removed the page recently. The revelation devastated his credibility. During testimony, prosecutors confronted him. Mr. Mercer, why did you destroy evidence? Mercer sat silently for several seconds. Then he answered, because I was still afraid. Of Thomas Avery? Yes. After 37 years? Mercer looked toward the jury. Some people spend their whole lives afraid of the same person. The courtroom became silent. The statement was emotional. But emotion was not evidence. The jury had to decide. Was Mercer a victim, a criminal, a witness, or something in between? Then Thomas Avery finally spoke. After months of silence, he chose to testify. The courtroom expected confession. Instead, Avery denied everything. He claimed Emily was unstable. He claimed Mercer acted alone. He claimed the financial documents were misunderstood. He claimed the photograph proved nothing. He claimed everyone was looking for someone to blame. But one question destroyed his defense. The prosecutor placed the old photograph on the screen. Emily Carson, Thomas Avery, standing together. September 1987. Mr. Avery, why did you tell investigators you never met Emily Carson? Avery stared at the image. No answer. The prosecutor repeated the question. Still nothing. The silence lasted almost 20 seconds. Then Avery finally spoke. I didn't remember. A weak answer. A familiar answer. The same answer that had appeared throughout the investigation. I don't remember. I don't know. I can't explain. The jury noticed. Everyone noticed. A pattern built over decades. Not one mistake. Not one forgotten detail. A lifetime of avoiding the truth. After 6 weeks of testimony, the jury reached a verdict. The courtroom was filled. Emily's family sat in the front row. Investigators watched quietly. Thomas Avery entered wearing a dark suit. The judge looked toward the jury. Have you reached a decision? The foreperson stood. The room held its breath. The verdict was read. Guilty. After 37 years, the cold case was finally solved. But the ending was not simple, because one question remained. What about Daniel Mercer, the man whose fingerprints started everything? The man who lied. The man who knew. The man who finally told the truth. Justice had arrived. But not completely. Because solving a murder does not erase the years lost. It does not return a daughter to her parents. It does not restore the childhood memories of students who waited for a teacher who never came back. And it does not remove the haunting reality that the truth had been sitting inside a forgotten fingerprint, waiting for someone to finally look closely enough